Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another edition of Stars, Stripes, and Anfield Nights. Liverpool meltdown Twitter is postponed at least for a little while. Maybe not on the transfer front, but we had a great debut. Got 3 points in the bag, and we're going to discuss the transfers. We're going to discuss the match, the upcoming match. But first, with me, I have Dan, Brandon, and Colin. Great to see you all. Dan, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine. I mean, the meltdown. Yeah, we're about to potentially sign a goalkeeper, so I would put a pin on that meltdown. That there's going to be a meltdown regardless of who gets signed and who does not get signed, and it's going to be fun. I think is the word is the word we're going to use if Mamardashvili is the only player signed before the transfer deadline day, which is a potential possibility. Yeah, that's where we're at right now. Great, good goalkeeper, good signing, boring signing. No one's gonna be happy.
We'll see. But Brandon, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, Drew. Hopefully you're doing great as well. I'm happy to be here tonight. Just done schoolwork all day, so I've done absolutely nothing all day. So this is a nice little break for me. So I'm happy to talk about whatever of a game I didn't get to watch over the weekend. So it's great.
Oh man. Well, Colin, how you doing? Assuming you caught the game.
I did. Yeah, Tale of Two Halves. The second, like, just pure joy to watch. The first, quite a bit more frustrating, but thrilled to be here with friends and hopefully, it's like this one and one more before the window closes. Hopefully, we have some excitement to talk about.
Yeah, and we'll kickstart that with what Dan was talking about. Apparently there is an agreement in place between us and Valencia for Mamardashvili, I believe. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he is the goalkeeper with the potential loan back to Valencia for a year before him joining Liverpool. Seems like the structure of the fee is still yet to be agreed, but it seems like it could be likely at this stage. Dan, you kicked it off. How are you feeling about us signing another goalkeeper?
So here's the thing. I actually hosted the rendition of Friday night in Enfield. Friday nights in Enfield. No, wait, it's what is it? Tuesday. Star Stripes and Enfield Nights. I was gonna give it like 5 different names. I was rebranding the show live on air. 2 weeks ago is when Mamardashvili was the one linked. Is when I hosted 2 weeks ago. At the time, I was very much playing down because they had also been linked to another backup goalkeeper. Other people on the stream were much more positive about him. I was kind of like, meh. If you're buying this player, you're essentially telling Yaros, Kelleher, potentially Pitaluga, Davies, that hey, you're not good enough to replace Allison, which may be true, and that's Richard Hughes' job, that's Arna Slot's job to assess the squad and figure strengthen. Look, after about 2 weeks of it, looking into it a bit more, seeing his tape, I think he's probably the closest thing you're going to get to an Allison replacement at his age, at 23. There's not that many great goalkeepers out there right now between the ages of 23 to 30. I think you have Andreev Lunin at Madrid from Ukraine. I don't think David Ray is that good. I'm struggling to think of any good goalkeepers at the moment, which is terrible. Help me out with goalkeepers, guys. Vicario's old. He's like 30. Maybe Donnarumma. But he's like 25, 26, but he's at PSG on like a ridiculous wage plus a hotel every month for his salary. So, I mean, in terms of long-term planning for Allison, it's a good buy. Granted, it's not official yet. It has not been here we go, Ornstein or Joist. So, all hands off until it's finally confirmed. But it seems like it's going to be confirmed. And it's a good piece of business, especially with him only being loaned to Valencia for 1 year.
Yeah, it's definitely seeming like this is an imminent change in the changing of the guard. As you said, Dan, it's definitely marks the sign that Kelleher is clearly not going to be replacing Allison if you're spending this much money on a keeper. Brandon, how do you feel about that? Do you think that it's the right choice to get a replacement for Allison now? Do you think that means he's gone in a year? And What about Keller? How do you feel about that whole situation?
Well, I think if this is the player that you have identified that this could be the guy who's, even if you think Pitaluga, Yaros could be world class guys, but you think this guy could be better, if you go get him, you go get him. That's what Liverpool should do, is go get the players that they think are going to make the biggest difference in the squad. I think the biggest issue is that it's not the biggest area of need, and if that's the only signing we do all summer, it is a very flat summer. We get somebody we get next year. Plus, we didn't address what seems to be more pressing needs in the team, like either obviously one with the Zubi issues. There's talk of the backup right winger, left back, or left center back, whatever. If we're not getting those, then we got a keeper that we're not going to see for a year. It's kind of really puts a sour taste on the whole summer. But the player, he's a massive. He's like 6'6". He's a big guy. I think the stats kind of line up that he's a good goalkeeper. I would more into like the Pitaluga or Yaros being kind of the guys going forward, but I'm not a part of the club, so I can't make those decisions for everybody. Yeah, I don't know. It's not one that gets me up in the morning, like this type of transfer saga. Like, because I said, there's just other things that seem to be we should be using our time towards.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And Colin, how do you feel about the situation? Do you think Kelleher should be felt hard done by if deputizing for Allison whenever he's injured, come through many times on the goalkeeping Euro wall? Do you think he's kind of screwed over in this case, or do you think it's the right move to be buying Mamardashvili?
I think it is sort of both. Like, if I was Kelleher, I would feel hard done by. If you feel like, and the club sort of feel like that he's good enough to be, not sold to certain clubs, or to really sit on the value that we believe that he is, and he's definitely a Premier League caliber goalie. When he has his run of games, he's outstanding. I don't think that should prevent you from moving for, if you think that there is a guy who is the next guy, or for the next 10 years he'll be a top 5 goalkeeper in the world. I don't think that as a club and as a business that should stop you from moving for that player. But that doesn't, I don't think, mean that Kelleher wouldn't feel a certain way about it. I would. To me, it seems like I think the turnover from Allison and Kelleher's time here is coming shortly, and I think, frankly, that this kind of transfer is one that this group and this backroom staff really are going to make moving forward. I just don't think that, obviously, with the short time frame in the summer, and even shorter time frame because of the Euros, that it has sort of prevented them from doing these. So they are kind of, in some ways, behind the ball in terms of like getting players in. But I feel of two minds about it, to be honest.
I think from Kelleher, it depends on what happens next. Like in this situation, they've been trying to sell him for 2 years, or at least they've been open to selling him for a couple of years. They've been comfortable with that. I think Kelleher knows that he's not seen as the long-term replacement to Allison. I think he knows that. So what he wants is just a career, is to start his career. Now, in Kelleher's, to help Keller out here, last year he had 29, I think, games total. I was pulling up 26. Mm-hmm. So he had his first kind of like half of a season filling in for Allison being injured, and then show his quality. It's up. Liverpool set the value, so they say, "Hey, we think he's worth 25 to 30 million, pretty much on par with a Georgi Mamardashvili, just for the fact that Kelleher is 6'2". He's an Irish Republic international. He's good at the back. I think he's a better than David Raya. Again, there's no Arsenal fans watching this, but I think he's a better goalkeeper than Davison Sanchez Robert Sanchez at Chelsea. I think he's probably on par with Onana, all things considered. Maybe less errors, though he has made a couple of errors or missed some shots, but I think he's on par with Andre Onana. And I mean, he's better than Stefan Ortega at City. As much as people at City were saying how good he is, Even Ederson himself at City, his ball distribution is fantastic, but his save percentage is average.
I think
Like
he's better
Ederson,
than Dean Henderson.
no, he's way better than Dean Henderson at
He's starting
Palace.
at Palace.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Or at least, if not better, he's at least at worst the same. At worst, he is Dean Henderson, who is backing up David De Gea. So in one instance, you can see it as they've developed him. He's put in the work too. He's not at a point where he could easily go and start for top 6 teams to top 8 to top half teams in the Premier League. I'm actually surprised West Ham haven't tried to buy him, because West Ham need to replace Fabianski eventually. You can make an argument Everton, but they're not going to replace him. I would even say Newcastle could buy him, because Newcastle have Nick Pope. The only difference is Pope's a better shot stopper, but not as good with his feet. I think for Queven, the biggest issue is the fact that he just hasn't had a chance to solidify. He doesn't have that certainty. And this is very much a message sending to them, like, you're not the person replacing Alisson, which is fair. I think that's a perfectly fair assessment to make. I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing to go and say, this is the next one up the block, get him now, before too many people need a goalkeeper. I think the problem with like the Euro transfer, because you remember Lenny Euro back in November was close like 30-25 million, is that United needed a bunch of center backs. They were desperate. They bought him. Who else? Madrid needed center back, so that's been a dearth market. DMs, defensive midfielders, has been a dearth market for the past 2 years. Has not been a lot of quality ones. So if you can get a jump start on the goalkeeping market, which is probably the most important position on the field, like the most specialist, most important, if you can get the next great one coming up, you go and make that decision. Because at worst, he doesn't work, but one of your other ones works. And at that point, you can just loan him, sell him off, or do whatever you need for him as well. Because like the worst case scenario for Georgi Mamardashvili is that he's not better than Yaros or Pitaluga or Harvey Davies or any of them.
Hey, Brandon, elephant in the room here is Alisson. This kind of seems like it's the newspaper article that Alisson is on his way out within a year, maybe 2 max. Does anyone feel, Brandon, start with you, does anyone feel like Alisson needs to go, or do you think this is just maybe something behind the doors where he's expressed to Liverpool that, a year, maybe 2 is when he's going to start deciding to look at retirement plans?
Yeah, I really hope that. Alisson seems like the type of, his biggest issue is he always seems to get a little knock here and there, even as a goalkeeper. Like, he'll miss a patch of games every single season. Last year ended up being a longer kind of section of the year with Kelleher deputizing. I don't want to lose Alisson. He's one of the most beautiful human beings ever. I love the man, like more than almost anybody else at this club outside of Bobby Firmino. I really do not want to see him go anytime soon, but it does kind of seem like if you're getting a 23-year-old goalkeeper who is playing top level in Spain, like even with the 1 year like loan, you're not buying him to playing 5 years from now. You're buying him to hopefully have him kind of starting maybe next year, probably more the year after that. But yeah, it does seem like kind of maybe we're starting to see the last year, 2 years of Alisson Becker in a Liverpool uniform, which saddens me greatly. And then quickly in the chat, I'm wearing, I think, the 86 kit with Ian Rush on the back, Jay Muse. I think that's who this kit is. I can't remember the year. I think it's 86. But yeah, I hope it's not Alisson's last couple of years. I hope he retires a Red and becomes our manager. Then we build him a statue. Then he comes visit me in Ohio like every other day or something like that. That'd be beautiful.
And I think it's important that that's also a possibility. They sign Mamardashvili. Alisson extends for 3 to 4 to 5 years. Mamardashvili is the backup, and he just plays, and we win more leagues or Champions Leagues. Like this is a transfer that it does signal to me that they're thinking beyond Alisson, but so many other things could change between now and Alisson leaving too.
Definitely seems like this one. I'll pull this comment up from Joshua FSG, one of the best owners, if not the best. Bold claim. Definitely one that our fan base would be divided by. Last week discussed how I was FSG in, but one thing that they're showing this window is that they've been absolutely ruthless with exits. A lot of youngsters leaving. Carvalho left. Clark left. They're getting rid of a lot of people. Sepp Vandenberg would be the next one we're going to talk about, and he's nearing a permanent departure from Anfield. with a deal that would see a fee above £20 million. Now agreed Brentford and Bayer Leverkusen potentially agreed a $20 million deal, met at least the asking price. Liverpool are holding out for £25 million. Colin, where do you feel about this transfer deal? Are you, first off, the overall transfers of just seeming like their FSG is cleaning shop, Edwards back in the seat, Hughes getting rid of a lot of excess players, permanent deals away from the club, and specifically on Sepp, where do you feel we are in the center back position if he goes?
I do think that this is really a Michael Edwards philosophy, frankly. Like I don't think that this is like just a I don't think that this is just like a function of how he operates. I think that this is a core tenet to the way that he believes that his overall departments should run, which is if you have the opportunity to make sums of money and put green in the balance book, for a player that is not necessarily going to, or is not a nailed on starter, make the money. I think a lot about, and I don't mean to seem too harsh about it. Like, I think a lot of these players have Premier League talent, like long-term Premier League talent. I'm thinking of the one that always strikes me, the Harry Wilson. I believe he's still in Fulham's first team. He's not a world beater, but we sold him for a nice profit. And also, I don't think that Fulham was really, swindled by that deal. I think they're getting good value for whatever they paid for him. I think the center back grouping, if Sepp goes, when Sepp goes in the next week, is desperately thin. And it deeply worries me, not because I don't believe in any of the individual players. I don't think that any of the, I would be very, very happy to go into any season with, Ibu and Virgil being the starting center backs. I think that they're phenomenal. My issue and my worry is that Ibu has not had a consistent opportunity to play week in and week out because of his injury history. It's a real concern, and it's not like a personal, vendetta against him. It's if we have an injury or two, we are playing so many games this year. I don't know who will play the games. I would be happy for Sepp Vandenberg to be playing, League Cup game or an FA Cup. I'd be more than happy to have him play those games for Liverpool. I have no problem with that at all. I think he is, Bundesliga, mid-table to low-table Premier League, starting caliber. But I don't see anything wrong with making the money. Make the money, put the green in the balance book. We're clearly making a lot of money off these guys this summer. I saw one of the guys I follow on Twitter. I can't remember who it was at the moment, but he kind of laid out if we sell off who we think we already have and who we think will go. If you include Gomez, and that's going to be a later topic for us, but we're at 150 million in, that, with nothing else, no other spending, maybe 30 on MAMAR. But that's a really it's a fundamental core tenet of the way that Liverpool are going to do business, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely, you can't knock it from a business standpoint in terms of making profit. Situation becomes, as Jay Muse put in the comments, we'd be down to Nat Phillips and Amara if we sell Joe and Sepp. That's the other topic on the docket tonight, is Joe Gomez potentially being tapped up by Newcastle if the Mark Gahey deal falls through. Dan, is all this signaling, especially this late in the window, surely if Sepp goes, you need to replace him as center back, because you can't rely on Kanate, Gomez, Kwanzaa to partner Verge with the injury history, not Kwanzaa side, but youngster side. But if we get rid of Gomez as well, this latency, like, is this? They better have somebody in place for this, right? How do you feel about that?
Well, my thing is that if Sepp Vandenberg is most likely going to go to Brentford, that was the article today by Paul Joyce, who was linking to somebody else who writes for the Telegraph. It's not 100%. It has been 100% confirmed yet, but it does seem like 99.99% done that that's what's going to happen. That Sepp will go to Brentford over Bayer Leverkusen, though again, Leverkusen are apparently selling one of their center backs or potentially selling a center back. So we'll wait to see how that deal progresses. If Sepp goes, I'm not really worried about buying a center back. If Joe Gomez goes, which is potentially likely, then you're going to need a center back because we'll be down to 3 first-team center backs at this point. I guess 4 if you want to include Nat Phillips. The only reason I'm not including Nat Phillips because we always forget Nat Phillips still plays for Liverpool, sadly. The hero himself, the legend. If you sell Sepp, I don't think you need to buy a center back, but you should. If you sell both Sepp and Joe, then yes, you do need to buy a center back, but potentially a center back that is left-sided and potentially a more progressive passer of the ball. The one a lot of people have been talking about is Mark Gahey. Now, I don't think they're going to buy Mark Gahey because Mark Gahey, 1, is way too expensive. 2, I don't think he's that good for the price it's quoted for him. And 3, I think it'll be Gonzalo Ignacio because he's the only one that stands out statistically. If you look at all the players that Liverpool have been linked to that we know that they tried to sign or were interested in signing, Gordon for Gomez was an interesting one because you're replacing an attacker with a winger. And I think that was made with the idea that they're probably not going to sign Salah. And they're probably going to look to bring in a defender, but they wanted to get an attacker too. But with the PSR, they were going to only pay 35 mil, so not that much. If you do the calculations correctly, Mamardashvili, let's say 35 million euros out of 150, let's say sells 35 million. I think it's 60. I think it's 50 something for Gonzalo Ignacio, so that's 80 million. That leaves potentially that leaves 70 million on the table between agents fees, whatever you want to quote for potentially another forward, which I think they could definitely do if they sell all the players that we're anticipating they sell. I think if we have 8 defenders, I think we'll be fine, at least until January. And then if we have to do something else, that will be interesting. But we have to have 8, in my opinion. I think everyone wants 9. Some people even want 10. They were like, oh, we lost Matip, so we need to sign another one. Which if we had signed another replacement Matip, we'd be at 10 defenders. Right now we're at 9 without Gomez and Sepp going. I think Arne Slot wants 8. I don't think he wants a big squad. A lot of people have been commenting on this. I think when Liverpool are at their best as a team and when we won the title, we had 18, 19, 20 really solid squad with a good 15 to 16 and then a good 4 to 5 rotational players. Like that was 20, and we still had youth players developing. Like Harvey Elliott wasn't in the first team yet. Curtis Jones was still coming up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's when we were able to win the titles, that we had that very small, tight-knit group, and we just got everything out of them that we could. I don't think Slot wants a squad bigger than 21 to 22 players that he can rely on. I think as of right now, we're at 22 because we did not sign Zubimendi, minus Georgi because he's not going to come till next year. Any other player we're signing, we're essentially swapping them out in the squad. So if we sell Sepp and Gomez, that brings down to 20 first-team players. We're at 20 first-team players, meaning that if you want the defender, you're going to have to sign the defender. That brings us back to 21. And if they sign a 4, that brings them to 22. And I think that's kind of where Slot wants his team to be at for this season going forward. And I think you're going to have somewhere between 20 to 22 to compete with all these games.
I think for me, it comes down to the potential injury crisis. Because the year we did win the league, we stormed it, and it seemed like everyone was fit. Probably helped there was a break with a pretty long break with COVID for players to rest up, but we pretty much had the league wrapped and done by that point. But Brandon, where do you sit on this side of the fence? Where potential where we're at with center backs, most definitely losing Sepp Vandenberg. possibly losing Joe Gomez. How do you feel about how many defenders we need to bring in at that point? Both scenarios, if Gomez stays or if he goes, Sepp, we're assuming, is gone. And who is the target to replace him? Because as Dan said, Gay's price tag is pretty ridiculous. It's pretty much Virgil van Dijk level, and I don't think you get that quality for that price from Gay at this stage. But maybe Slack can work with them. But where are you sitting on this this whole debacle?
Yeah, a little bit like with what Dan's saying. Like, if we sell Sepp, I think we can make do. Even with, I mean, I think like Gomez's history issue is not overblown, but it seems like his injuries are more like not so much freakish. It's like he has like a knee injury, then he breaks something. It's like it's not like it's a continuing muscle issue like Konate has, where it's like, oh, he's always pulling his thigh or he's pulling a hamstring. And then Kwanzaa, we do have to expect at some point he will have to show a consistent run of growing pains because, you know, not every player goes into a first team and just continuously rises. They're going to have to hit a patch where they're not playing as well. So, I mean, if we sell Sepp, I think we can make do with everything we have. It wouldn't be ideal. I would want if Sepp goes, another player coming in. If Sepp goes and Joe goes, and nobody comes in, that's an absolute disaster. Like an absolute, like, this is going to get really bad. It's going to get just like the year we're playing Reece Williams and Nat Phillips at the back and Ozan Kabak's coming in on loan and Ben Davies shows up, gets a paycheck, never shows up for the club ever again and goes off on loan a couple times. If both go, you have to do something. If Joe goes, I think you could keep Sepp and be fine because Sepp does have versatility. I know when he at Preston, he played at right back for most of that season. And I know Preston fans were really impressed how he played at right back. So, I mean, I know he can play there. Obviously, playing at Preston, playing at Liverpool is, you know, night and day. But he definitely also has the ability to play in high pressure situations. Mine was in the relegation scrap to like the last day of the season last year. So he knows how to perform under great pressures. So I think if you sell one, you're fine. You can live even if it's Gomez over Sepp. But if you sell both, you have to get somebody. It has to be like Ignacio is a great shout. He's always on the tip of almost everybody's tongue. Yeah, Gay would be great if it wasn't 80 million. If it was, I think if you can get him at 55 for the homegrown price and stuff like that, I think you'd like that's good business. I think Palace should be happy with 55, but you know, it's just the modern market. Nobody's ever happy with enough. And I feel that's what we're seeing with all of our transfers as everything gets dragged out, that everybody just wants $1 extra million for every single transfer or something where it's holding everything up. So I think, yeah, but overall, losing one, not the absolute end of the world, wouldn't make me super comfortable, but I think we'd get by. Losing both is an absolute disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, I agree with that, Brendan. And I'm curious if Crystal Palace might be feeling, I don't know, a bit hard done by with Joachim Anderson going, what, for 30 million? I feel like that's pretty cheap for the quality he's shown. But you're right that he has that English tax, which seems to be absolutely ridiculous on every English player. Colin, I believe it was David Ornstein made the comment in an interview that he liked. I'm butchering the quote, but it was essentially that Hughes from Liverpool, he respected or liked what he was doing, a lot of work behind the scenes. And it kind of like, you know, at least when I was reading it, it was like, oh, stuff's going to happen. If it was just the goalkeeper, I'd be very disappointed with that analysis. With that coming from Ornstein, do you think there's just going to be a big transfer flurry in the next week or two? And what do you think we need to bring in?
Yeah, I watched that clip. It was from NBC Sports. It was David Ornstein with Rebecca Lowe. I believe they were at Stamford Bridge, and I was very interested by those comments as well. Like that really struck me. I really don't think that the majority of like reason or, you know, the majority of Liverpool fans like really think that like nothing has been going on behind the scenes. I think that the majority of people who are really upset, and this goes for, you know, everybody who's really mad, you know, really mad in our group. The majority of this comes from just being bitten. Brandon's talking about the Ozan Kabak, Ben Davies, Reece Williams, Nat Phillips season, and like allowing that season to happen under Jurgen Klopp and using that as one of his seasons is like actually diabolical negligence. I cannot defend that sort of team planning and in refusal to spend money from the club at that time. Like I genuinely cannot. However, I do think that, and I really do believe that there has been a lot of work going on. And also I think that this summer presented challenges that very few summers have. There were 2 major international tournaments going on in different places at different times. So at least if it's a World Cup, you can send your agents or your scouts to the same place. Here with this summer, you're literally splitting resources. You're putting people all over the world to try to suss out and go speak to their agents and see what's going on. And the agents were very reluctant to, I'm sure, to do any sort of business until after all of that is over anyways, because in the same way, Mamardashvili's, his tape from this Euros, before Liverpool were linked with him, I had looked him up because I was like, who is that guy? Who is he? I don't know that I've ever seen him play. And his value easily doubled off of the highlights of this past summer. So I understand that there's a lot of the logistical challenges of doing business this summer, and for all of the David Ornstein quote that stood out to me from that interview was that sporting directors really are planning out their transfers at least a year in advance. They're really planning for 12 months ahead. And so, Richard Hughes and the team are almost a year or 9 to 10 months behind the ball in terms of creating relationships with agents, creating relationships with other club sporting directors, and trying to do business. It just is that the Liverpool fans have been bit by this sort of stinginess, or this feeling that they won't just spend the money, but when they should. And I understand both sides of it, although it is deeply frustrating.
So first, I think it's important for the 2020-2021 season to contextualize that a bit. So they at that summer they bought Tsimikas, Jota, and Thiago. So that's the summer those 3 come in. At that time, we had a bunch of midfielders, and the plan was they wanted Ibrahima Konate, but Leipzig were not going to sell him to next year. So this is the COVID season. And the next person they were strongly linked with was Ozan Kabak. But Schalke would only sell him for 38, 40, or 50. He was I think it was 38 mil is what we ended up would have paid, which is the same as Konate. So in that instance, you can understand why they made that decision, because they're thinking we have enough midfielders to cover it. Fabinho can be our 4th choice center back for a year. We'll keep Nat Phillips around for a 5th if we need it. Don't think we'll need it. And we'll be fine. And then everyone got injured at Everton. And then Matip gets injured and is essentially hobbled for the rest of the season. Gomez snaps his tendon metatarsal randomly off the field for England. The worst thing that could happen had happened, and everyone freaks out because it's oh, why didn't we do this? But if you think about what if they had bought Kabak, yeah, we would have had him, but it wouldn't have made that big of a difference considering. And you would rather have Ibrahima Konate than Ozan Kabak. And yeah, I completely agree. There is that there is that aspect of being the smartest guy in the room and knowing who you want doesn't always translate well to supporters who just want that instant gratification of a transfer. And I do agree with your Colin, that general sense of anxiety. What I will say is that with Hughes especially is that if you look at all the players we tried to sign, they're with agents that Hughes already knew. So Zubamendi, his agent is the same as the guy he negotiated with to bring in the manager for Bournemouth. Euro, I think, has a similar manager. Xabi Alonso, when they were doing the manager search, has a similar agent. So Hughes was using his connections to try and get these individual pieces. Again, the opportunism aspect of it. The only one that's interesting, I don't know, is Mamardashvili. I don't think he has the same representative, so that one takes a lot more work. And if you look at Gordon also does the same representatives. But if you look at who they tried to sign initially, or the ones we were strongly linked to at the time, they're all agents that Hughes has a previous relationship with and says, okay, we know this person. We can do this deal. This is our profile. Let's get it done. Didn't work out. Euro had that injury and they wanted way more money, and United bought him, injured him, and now he's gone for a while, which is the United trifecta. And obviously with Zubimendi, the mountains were just too beautiful. So, like I can't, this Basque Country is beautiful. I've never been there, but I imagine those mountains were something. But in that case,
Sebastian, it looks incredible. But
absolutely. But even the Martin Zubimendi case, like in that situation, if he's going to back out that quickly, you'd rather have a player that says like, oh, I said yes, and Hughes said he said yes. If he backs out, say at your homegrown club, I understand it. That's better than buying a player that 3 months in is like, oh, wait, the weather in Liverpool kind of sucks. Let me go back to San Sebastian. I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
You'd rather have a happy player than an unhappy player.
Yeah, you definitely don't want a player who says yes, and then a couple days later it's like, actually, no. But I think for me, Colin, the twice bitten, or was it once bitten, twice shy, comes down to like when we got rid of Lovren, Dan, in that like COVID season, everyone's like, okay, we're gonna replace Lovren, and then it was like the Kanate a year later signing. It's like, wait, so we're not replacing Lovren. Cool.
Yeah.
Like we're probably good if no one gets injured, and then injuries happen. I believe Matt Phillips was on loan. We had to call him back from loan. Like it was, but I don't know. It's like just to like. I'll throw this to Brandon first, and then Dan follow up. Do you think we need signing like for Endo, like another one saying like he's cool with us getting another number 6? That kind of reminds me of the Lovren leaving. It's kind of like, hey, this guy might not be the starting. Gravenberch has rolled into that, but Brandon, where do you feel on who would you like to bring in? Who do we need to bring in your opinion, if at all?
Let's see. I've been torn between like getting another like kind of center back as we set up for the future, and then doing either a true number 6. Because I talked about it, I think, with you last week. Like, Grab, I think, can really develop into a elite 6. He has all those type of tools. He's big, he's long, he's lanky. Like, he's strong. He's very good with the ball. He progresses very well. He does a lot of things you really want in this system. But at the same time, you're asking to learn that position on the fly when you want to be competing for everything that you're in, that you're asking a lot of him. So I think a 6 that can be like a metronome, kind of that basically what Zubimendi would have been, would be great. I think that would take more precedent over the center back situation, unless obviously, as I was talking earlier, both Gomez and Sepp are out the door. Then it's obviously we have to get a center back in. Like, it's the most paramount decision. I'll take Kabak back. I don't care at that point. A body at a certain point will help out. Nothing against Nalo or even against Nat Phillips. I love Nat Phillips for what he did, but like Nalo hasn't had the same buzz that Kwanzaa had like last year about developing into the first team. So like, because Kwanzaa seemed to be kind of ready to take that big step. Like, kind of listening to like the youth and even that wonderfully smart human being, Joey Barton, talk about how much Jarrell Kwanzaa is a great player. You're not hearing quite as much about that about Nalo at the moment. Hopefully he becomes that. But as right now, he doesn't have that same buzz about jumping into the first team. But as of this very moment, this second, central defensive midfielder, depending on what goes on the next couple of days, could become a center back.
Dan, where are you sitting there?
Yeah, I mean, my opinion on the whole thing has been, at the start of the summer, I said, I don't know who Liverpool should sign as number 6 when people talk about this, because the 6 conversation kills me, because it's what profile you're looking at. I think it's important with Martin Zubimendi. Hold on, Solo. I'm going to blow your mind. When we were linked to Zubimendi, that was the week that all the players, Gravenberch, McAllister, and all of them got back. So at this point, Slot had not worked with any of them. They play that weekend, Sevilla, Las Palmas. They all get their games. Curtis Jones, Ryan Gravenberch always plays as well. The Zubimendi deal collapses the Monday, so they had a week. They had the preseason game. Deal collapses by Monday. Zubimendi decides to stay. Then they Slot starts Gravenberch. He doesn't start Jones or Elliott, and I think Gravenberch has shown how good he can be as a double pivot 6. I hate saying the 6. It's as a double pivot midfielder. also as a loan because of he has everything that you want from someone that can progress the ball, passing, carrying. His tackles and interceptions are the same as Declan Rice. He's just not as, I guess, intense as Declan Rice is as a player because Declan Rice puts in way more pressures, but that's also just how Arsenal have Rice play. So I think the reason that they didn't look for another defensive mid is that if you look at what Martin Zubermindi is, he's just a better version of Curtis Jones. That's all he is. He's not amazing at anything across the board except his aerial wins are really high, but he's essentially a Curtis Jones that's slightly better at the metronome part, or I would say a slightly bigger Thiago who wins more of his aerial duels. So he's kind of like better than Jones, not quite Thiago, but he can come in, he can think about like a slightly more metronomic Alexis McAllister or cloning Alexis McAllister in certain ways. I think that deal made sense at the time because of what Slot was looking at and what he was expecting. Then obviously he has to react to the situation. They put Gravenberch in. I think he's shown that he's more than capable of doing that role. And I've said he's more than capable of doing that role for a whole year. And I'm going to blow my trumpet about that to the end of time because I called it. And if it works out, then I didn't say anything. It was not me. So if you're not buying a 6, then you're going to need a ball playing center back. Carter's been talking about this all the time in the chat, especially if you're selling Sepp and Gomez. And I think that's where they're going, is that if you're not going to sign another midfielder, not even a defensive midfielder, you need more progression from deep, and you need potentially another forward to help you out with that. So for me, if they're going to sign anybody, take Georgi. We'll say he's the bonus, the cherry on top. You're going to need a defender, and you're probably going to need a winger. If nothing else, just to make up the numbers and to give you more flexibility, because the only way you're going to win games is by scoring goals, just being realistic. And it seems like Slot's way of playing is a lot more controlled, and it's a lot easier for players to struggle a bit in that system. So I don't think you need a world-class 6 to win a league with this team. You just need someone like a Ryan Gravenberch who's really good, tall, lanky, obviously has been touted as one of the great talents coming out of Ajax, coming in, developing that system, making that position his own, and then everybody else kind of fitting in around that. Your McAllisters, your Dominic Soboslais, your Mo Salahs, Diogo Jota, Luis Diaz. I mean, honestly, at this point, I'm just going to say if Darwin Nunez can score 25 goals, we'll win the league. Like, that's my shout for the whole year. If you can find a way to get Darwin Nunez 25 goals this season, you're going to win the league on a canter, is my honest opinion on this whole situation. And the only thing the center back and the forward signing will do will allow us to rotate and keep people fresh and keep people taking over in rhythm. So hopefully we don't get those injuries at bad times, like last year with Brentford, when we got Jones, Jota, Darwin, and Salah injured all in the same game. And that just, our season just never got back on track after that.
And Colin, we'll have you round up the transfer conversation before we move on, reflecting on past weekend's game into Brentford this weekend. Throw up a couple from the chat for you. Who is your ideal number 6? Do you think we need to bring that into the club before the window closes? And actually, a shot from Joshua. Why did the Wolves left back go quiet? Anyone know? 8 Nori. Are you confident in left back? And the 6th question as well.
So, I'm glad you pulled that one up. To me, they all kind of ties together. I don't think, given the options that we have currently and seeing live, both in person and also in person in Pittsburgh, and then also this past weekend in our first Premier League game, our first real game action. I actually do not think that we need a 6 as badly as we would need a center back, a left center back, someone that is, Dan mentioned in particular, is kind of ball progressing. That to me is the number one need currently. To me, there are more people who could slot into, and again, this is something that Dan kind of touched on, that we keep saying dual 6s. While they are dual 6s, they don't play like Fabinho. Their roles and responsibilities are not sit in front of the center backs and go just ball recover constantly and then just play the ball forward. their roles and responsibilities are much more closely associated with, touch turn, quick progression, and and that ball move. It really is like, to me, that there is like two midfielders, and you can call them eights, you can call them whatever you call them, but we're basically, it's two midfielders, and then the 10 is really just another forward, and it almost becomes 4-2-4, I think, in a lot of ways, and that 10 kind of sits off ball side, while the striker's kind of making a run or dropping back in, and it becomes more, if you're looking at the responsibilities of the players, it to me, if I was teaching it to my team, I would teach it 4-2-4 rather than 4-2-3-1, and being like, oh, these guys only sit here and they play, defense in front of them. Like, it just, and maybe that will change when we play a more, when we play City. Maybe I'll be more worried about having another midfielder, and maybe I'll be more worried about having a midfielder that is like just defensive action, intercepting the ball, turning, and being able to do that. But if you look at the amount of teams that we're going to play, that we're going to have the majority of possession against, I've now convinced myself that I don't think that we don't need another midfielder. I think Gravenberch, Jones, McAllister,
Endo's still there, Morton's still
Szoboszlai,
there.
Endo, Morton, like that to me is enough. It is much more worrisome to me that if we let Sepp Vandenberg go, that we get a center back. I really, really don't want Joe Gomez to go. I would like to put myself on record there. Like, I really think he's like an ultimate team player. Like, the man will do the job and do it well, regardless of where it is, whether it's right back, left back, center back on either side. Like, he played defensive midfielder in stints last year. So like that to me, if he goes, like, I'm like red alert. We need a center back right now.
Yeah, that's completely fair.
I do want to say on the Gravenberg thing that I think a lot of people think of him because Klopp played him as a 10 last year. His interceptions are just as good as like Rice. If you're looking at what you judge DM by, his duels are just as good. His interceptions are just as good. His ball playing and I think carries are about the same. I have to get one of the radars and do a comp side by side. It's hard because it's not that much recent evidence in the Premier League. But yeah, no, I think that Gravenberg has always been the secret answer to this problem, also by Jetic, and that it's more important, what we do at center back and other positions than what we do in midfield. Sorry there, Drew.
No, you did. And I completely agree. I was very impressed with Gravenberch at the 6, particularly from that point of like ball tackling. I feel like the ref, like, he was very hard done by the ref. I feel like he got called for a couple fouls when he cleanly got the ball and did so in a pretty creative way, at least 2 times that I'm remembering. But I'll use that to kick into the weekend. Brandon, I'll give you a breather just because you said you didn't catch the game, so I'm gonna bring you in quickly.
Well,
just give me a thumbs up. Did you? Yeah.
I got to watch the first half. I didn't get to watch the second half, so I don't think I'm allowed to watch Liverpool moving forward. So I don't think that's going to be the thing. I think I have to like follow on my phone because I'm not allowed to watch Liverpool and they play well. I don't think I've watched this play well since like March, because like every time I got to watch this, whenever we played horribly down the stretch, and then I missed like the last few weeks of the season before the Klopp game, like Klopp's last game. So it was like every time we played well, I wasn't watching, and then every time we played like dog shit, I was watching.
You have to watch it, Brandon. It's so good. Like, it's the best I've seen Liverpool play in a while. Probably since we played United, but we didn't score. We only scored 1 goal, which is the problem. Since we played United,
it was really, really good. Brandon, not only a little stitious, but he is in fact superstitious.
Very much so. I played baseball.
Me quietly removing Brandon from the studio for any chances. But Dan, how did you feel about the opening fixture against Ipswich? Going into this home match against Brentford, we had to deal with a away crowd. Ipswich, newly promoted to the Premier League, was it like 20 years? All that energy rocky first half, but my word of the day was patience. And then in the second half, it seemed like all their energy burnt out from Ipswich, and Liverpool just lit a fire. With what you saw on that game against Ipswich, how confident are you going into the match against Brentford this weekend at home? And is there any banana peels that you see?
Well, we did sell them Fabio Carvalho. We might sell them Sepp Vandenberg before the game. So, Sepp probably wouldn't be cleared to go. Maybe that's what they're waiting. They're waiting for the game to happen, then make the transfer. And they're probably telling them like, well, we'll wait for the game to be over. No, I mean, I'm extremely confident. I think, Brentford are always a tricky opposition because Thomas Frank is a really good coach. Even though some people in our chat disagree and said he was going to get sacked last year, he's a very, very good, smart, tactical coach. I think at times he gets maybe stuck in his ways like every manager does, but he's always somewhat in being inventive, especially with set pieces. A game at home, Anfield, Brentford just had that tough away win tough home win against Palace, where I felt Palace may have been the one seen as the up and coming. I'm very, very confident. I think it might be a more similar to the first game. You have to be very patient. Even though it is a home game, you expect the win to be at our back. That being said, if we open up the game the way we started the second half, if we start that way, we could probably be 2-0 up by 20, or probably 3-0 up by 30. And then, we're all just singing Arne Slot, the la, Arne Slot, la. And Jurgen's going to be there in the crowd singing it too, which is, this is the first thing I want to remind everyone who's going to watch this, that this is going to be the first game that Jurgen's going to, I don't know if he'll be there in the crowd, but he could be in the crowd watching his boys play with Arne Slot's new team. I am very confident. The one thing I worry about, especially with Brentford, is that Brentford are just big and burly, and they love they're direct. They're very smart. They're very well coached. And if there's one thing I'll say about Ipswich is that they were intense, but they burned out very quickly, and they don't have as much size as Brentford does. And I feel like one of the things you saw at the Ipswich game is that we're a little bit leaner this year, so we're more finesse, we're more nimbly, but maybe not as robust as we've been in the past. That may help us with injuries, but I also think that means that if we're smart, and I think it looks like we've been very smart so far, and how we've managed the Ipswich game, for example, is that we might make some mistakes, but no easy goals. Don't give them encouragement. And if you really think about the Ipswich game, apart from like one or two notable mistakes, we dealt with them very well. And I think that if this was a Klopp game, no knock against Jurgen, I love him, is that if he was still in charge, that may have been a game we go 1-0 down. It's very similar to the Fulham game 2 years ago when we started out, where it was like it was 1-0, then 1-1. Then Van Dijk gives that dumb penalty against Alexander Mitrovic, and then Darwin gives the flick for 2-2, and then Henderson almost scores a worldie for the winner, but it hits the bar, doesn't go in. I'm very confident the Brentford game. I think if we put a good performance for there, I'm really excited for United, because in my heart of hearts, United are just they look so bad. I know that they won their opening fixture, but it took Xerxes. I think his name Xerxes.
Yeah, that game was diabolical.
It was absolutely diabolical.
Yeah.
I think if we go there with our first team, if no matter who we play, as long as we have Van Dijk, Alisson, Salah, I think we can win any game. Like, we can beat any team in the world, including City. And we showed that even when we were bad, we can beat any team in the world if we have those three players. I think we could be in a situation where Liverpool, at the end of the transfer window, have won the first three games, and it's like 10-0 on aggregate. Like 10-0 is our goal difference right now, because I don't see us conceding. The only way Brentford are going to score against us is if they get a nice set piece, or if they get a quick breakaway goal. But the way Slot has set us up, it seems like we'll be fine. Though again, they do have Carvalho, so that could be a situation where it's more of like it's a rough 0-0. We've missed a bunch of chances. Carvalho scores in the 80th minute. We lose 1-0. It's Arne Slot's debut at Anfield. That could also be on the cards, but I don't think it's the most likely, considering where both teams are at. Brentford are older. They're still they need young replacements, and we're very much on the up and up and purring. So I back us on Sunday to just get a good 2-3-0 win, and then roll on to United, and let's go embarrass them again at Old Trafford. That's all I want to say. I don't care if it's a 2-0. I just want it to be an embarrassment where we have the good Boldy Dutch manager. Not that fraud, Eric Ten Hag.
It will certainly be an interesting matchup. I'm thinking, credit to United. They had our number last season. Unfortunately, I'm still bitter about the FA Cup. So hopefully, our players remember that. But yeah, I like what you said, Dan. Particularly like the defense. I feel like the game against Ipswich first half, and then thing under Klopp was what was it, a string of 16 games or something conceded first. Under Slot, we've definitely seen him a lot more composed. So fingers crossed going into Brentford. As you said, they have players that are big and are quite skilled. I'll use this as a little mini break before I go to Colin for his thoughts on the game moving forward. But I have started a few questions and comments in the chat. We'll probably wrap up in the next 10 minutes. But if you want to get your comments and questions in, I'll look at them and have them start for a rapid fire closing up for the stream tonight. Colin, how are you feeling for the match against Brentford after what you've seen against Ipswich? Does the likes of Wisa and Mbuemo possibly scare you of getting maybe like a quick 1-0, the old dreaded conceded first goal, and maybe holding on? Or do you think we have the quality to get it done comfortably?
I think Brentford are much better than Ipswich, and I don't think Ipswich are going to be that bad. I think their manager is quite good, very savvy, and I think that they will do well. They're going to cause a lot of teams troubles. I think Brentford are so hard to play against. For the reasons outlined, they're big, they're physical. If you give away a set piece, they're a problem. But they also have really, really high quality going forward. And their forward, going forward for them is very, very much very direct. But it's a challenge to play against them. I continue to be a massive fan of Brian Mbuemo. If Liverpool were to buy him in January, I will be thrilled. I think he's really, really good. I definitely think this game is more challenging, even though it is at home. And just because it's more challenging doesn't mean that it won't be a better scoreline. It may be 3-0. But I think that would be more for if we do, win 3-0. I think that would be more for Liverpool being consistently great at converting chances rather than Brentford just not being very good and just giving up whatever to us. I think we're certainly going to have to earn it. Thomas Frank is a great coach, but I don't suspect that it's just going to be a walk in the park. I think it's going to be, Dan said, patient, a hard-fought win, certainly.
And Brandon, I'll wrap it up with you in terms of the match prediction for this weekend. Are your superstitions tingling, or are you feeling that we'll get a comfortable win? And I'll throw the first question from the chat to you as well. What happens if Jota gets injured?
In terms of the game, if I watch, we'll win 1-0. If I don't watch, it's 4-0 in 20 minutes. It's one of the best Liverpool performances of all time. But, I'll try and watch a little bit this weekend, more than I got to this past week. In terms of if Jota gets injured, I still believe Darwin has it in him to become an elite striker in the world of football. I think he does a lot of things elite. It's just the one thing you really want your number 9 to do is the one thing he has the most troubles with, which is composure. It seems like, he finds ways to hit the bar when it seems almost impossible to hit a bar. Like I think I made a joke one time that I think he thinks hitting the bar counts as 2 goals, and that's why he hits it so often. But yeah, I think it'd be not a great situation because obviously Diogo is one of our most clinical finisher at this point. He can be awful for 89 minutes, but he's wonderful for 1 minute and he gets a goal in that minute. So that's an incredible trait to have in world football. I still believe in Darwin, but yeah, I think overall, this week will be a 3-0 for Liverpool at home. I think Anfield will be rocking for Slot's first game. I don't think Klopp will be there. I think Klopp may try to kind of not be away from the club a little bit, let kind of Slot imprint himself on this team, not have the ghost of Klopp hanging over him every single home game or something like that. But then Jurgen does love the club, so he may just be in the middle of the cop end, trying to be as honest as possible. So I don't know. Yeah, 3-0 Liverpool over Brentford.
All right. And we'll wrap it up with the 3 questions that I started in the chat. Dan, I'll throw the first one to you. And of course, I just deleted it. But I believe it was talking about Kubo. I'll bring it up if I can. It seems like we were, here it is. We were really interested with Kubo during the entire year. Wonder if we will go back in. How do you feel about that rumor that's persisting? Do you think there's any need or validity in that rumor?
I think there's more validity in it than we're giving it credit for. I think it's more of a litmus test for the type of profile of player we're looking to play at the right wing, which is someone that is all energy and more creative, but not necessarily as goal scoring or creative as Salah is. I think what we're looking for to replace Salah in the future is someone that is going to be essentially Diaz, but on the right wing. Someone whose numbers may not be fantastic, maybe get 18 goals and assists a year, but is doing a lot of the hard work, the pressing, the winning back, playing in those through balls, dropping teams back, and is pacey. And I think that's the most important thing is pace. I think that whoever they're going to play on the wings is going to have pace. And that's why I think you won't see Harvey Elliott there, because I think Harvey's probably going to be rotate in the 10/midfield, like with Dom and McAllister, though obviously probably a little bit closer to the 10. I think Kubo is an underwhelming sign to some people because he doesn't score a lot of goals. And that's my big thing with him is that the numbers just aren't there. But if you're buying someone for 40, 50 million pounds and you're saying he's Diaz, but on the right wing, I think that's a solid buy. Because I think that the plan is that the main goal scorer will be the striker. That the goals are mostly going to come from within the width of the post, which will be your Nunez's, your Jotas, your Gakpos potentially, maybe even Diaz if Slot wants to play him as a striker, or even Salah, if Salah stays for a long period of time. But I think Kuba as a profile is very interesting, and I think that's probably where we're going to move from, instead of a right winger being a goal scorer, to more of a creative, not traditional winger, but someone that is doing the Diaz work on the left wing, but on the right wing and also left-footed.
It sounds like you're describing Brian Mbeumo.
No, I love Brian Mbeumo, but I love Brian Mbeumo too, but they're completely two different profiles because Mbeumo is very much a second striker. He is a goal-scoring forward. He is very much the inside forward, Sadio Mane, Mo Salah way of playing football, where they're a winger, but they're actually playing mostly within the width of the 18-yard line, the edge of the 18-yard box and the goalpost.
I just don't think that he wants the wingers just to beat the guy to the byline, though. Like,
no.
I think he does want
either.
them going inside. So to me, it's why it makes sense to me as that would be, that's the right. Also, I mean, Premier League experience can't be like underrated. Like, we don't know for sure that Kubo could hack it.
Oh, absolutely, I agree.
My biggest.
I agree. But if you're buying Brian Mbeumo, I think there's also an argument that you're playing him as a striker. You're playing more as a striker within the build-up. Or if you're playing him on the right wing, he's probably going to be your primary goal scorer. And I think that's what I'm kind of more getting at, is that they're very similar profiles, but Kubo's way more on the creative playmaking side, while Mbeumo is very much more of a finisher. And that's where his trajectory has been, is that his finishing has gotten better and better and better every year. And I love Brian Mbeumo. I'm not knocking you there, Colin. I will back the Brian Mbeumo train every day.
All right, I'm going to end it there. Sorry, everyone. I do have to make dinner. My girlfriend is waiting for me to make dinner. Apologies, we ran a little over, but hope you enjoyed the chat. I haven't said this yet because I like to leave it to the end, but if you do like the video, or if you've enjoyed watching the stream, please leave a like, subscribe if you're not subscribed to the channel. We really appreciate everyone who watches and interacts with the channel. We're here every Tuesday night for our Star Stripes Anfield night stream. Again, we really just appreciate everyone coming in, watching the stream, and getting involved. I've been Drew. This is Dan, Brandon, and Colin. Another night of Anfield Star Stripes Anfield nights in the bag. Wishing everyone a great rest of the week. Hopefully we get some transfer news that's positive and start off the season with a second win.